him a simple sorry or tell her a simple sorry. So that means you are trying to minimize the dispute and resolve it. So the resolution of the dispute or the conflict is in your control, because it abruptly started and it quickly spreads like a wildfire. You have the ability and you have the responsibility and you have the authority to decide and control and redirect how the dispute is going to escalate or it's going to die down. And you have lots of power to avoid or escalate conflicts. If you are submissive and with a simple sorry, things will die down. If you go back into an assertive mode, then in a fighting mode, then probably that will escalate to a higher level. So therefore, the origin of conflict need not be a pre-planned one or need not be a planned one. It can abruptly start and quickly escalate. And there are 4 steps to resolve conflicts. And what are the 4 steps? We have to know. These are the very basic 4 steps, which is equally important for everyone. It's not only important for the youth, it's also important for everyone across the spectrum, whether you are in a business, whether you are in a workplace, whether you have a dispute with your neighbor, whether there is a cross-border dispute, whether there is a dispute for water sharing. For all disputes and conflicts, these are the 4 successful steps that has been established and time-tested by great mediators who have practiced mediation. So let me explain to you what are the first steps. The first step is notice the conflict, stop and think. The first step is to stop and think. And how do you notice a conflict? We saw in the earlier slide that conflict will abruptly occur or conflict will abruptly incur. So therefore, once you see there is a dispute or a conflict, then you have to stop and think. If you know that you have stamped on somebody else's feet, or if you have rubbed on somebody else's shoulder, or if you have grabbed your neighbor's land, a part of the land, or if you have more resources that has led you to a dispute with your neighbor, then please stop and think. Why do you stop and think? You're buying some time, because you have the power, the authority, and the responsibility to either stop the dispute there and resolve it, or to escalate it to a higher level. So how do you react, which can determine whether you want the conflict to arise or you want the conflict to escalate or you want the conflict to die down. So what are the steps? You have to be strong, mature, and act like a leader. As you, as a college student, as a school student, or as a young budding lawyer, you should be always assertive, be strong, mature, and always act like a leader. Do not let words bother you. If others are going to use words against you, if others are going to abuse you in the process, do not let that bother you, because at the end they are going to regret of what they did to you. Be calm in all circumstances and do not fall for the conflict trap, which is a very, very important one. Do not fall for that conflict trap when you also stand up to the level of your opponent to shout back at him, or to throw words at him, or to assert yourself that you are superior to him, then obviously you are falling into a conflict trap. And step 2 is redirect. And what are you going to redirect? You are going to redirect the dispute or conflict into a conflict resolution mechanism. So all the conflicts starts with an argument or a disagreement, which we already saw. And here, argument will need to be stopped and redirected. The more the argument the more the dispute and the more the conflict. It's a human tendency and human psychology. When you argue, we remember everything which the opponent did to you 10 years ago and 15 years ago, and you start telling them 10 years ago you did this and this is how you treated me. So arguments have to be stopped and it has to be redirected for a successful cause. And nothing can be solved until conflict is redirected. If you stop and think and redirect and stay there, nothing is going to resolve, it's only going to escalate. So you have to redirect the conflict in a productive discussion. So instead of an argument, you have to start a productive discussion. Say for example, if you have a problem with a neighbor, let's say you have a common dustbin which is kept in front of your house, where your neighbor also uses a dustbin and he throws all the waste and the leftovers not in the dustbin but outside the dustbin. There is a dispute, and this dispute has to be redirected by explaining it to him in a productive manner of how it's not only going to make the place unlivable place, but it also going to lead to many diseases which will be equally for your neighbor, and that's where the productive discussion starts. And you should always be a leader and direct the argument into a fruitful discussion or negotiate. If required, you have to take a pause and take a break in the conflict. So always be a leader, show your leadership, and do not argue for unnecessary things, because argument is not going to lead to your solution. Argument is going to lead only to conflict, and a productive discussion is required, and it's the need of the hour to begin with to resolve the conflict. And what is step 3 to resolve the conflict? Step 3 is investigate. So we saw step 1 is to stop and think, step 2 is redirect, and then investigate. And what are you going to investigate? Because you are not a trained policeman, or you are not a trained lawyer, or you are not a trained advocate, or you are not a trained detective to investigate. But you have the common sense and you have all the requirements to investigate at your level. So you'll need to find out what exactly is causing the dispute or the conflict. So both the sides should have the opportunity to respectfully explain the point of view or how they feel. So argument is not going to lead to us anywhere, but explaining your point in an acceptable manner will be a productive discussion to start with, and which will also convey your feeling and emotion to the other party, by which they will feel and reciprocate your emotion. And you have to be willing to listen without interrupting. Maybe you might have friends who are always willing not to listen to you or to interpret, but you should be willing to listen and interpret, and keep the discussions focused on the real problem. So you have to always keep the discussion focused on the real problem. Do not let discussion become sidetracked or old, unrelated issues or a personal attack. So let's come to step 4. Are you there? Can I continue? Yeah, okay. So let's look at step 4. We have stop and think, redirect, investigate, and now it's time to find a solution.